Hello, and welcome to the Ascendant Art Podcast, where we are on a search for art that is ascending above the mainstream. This is Mike with Catalytic Comics, your host, here with Vinny from Little Chad and Joey from Keeper's Cairn. And tonight we have got a guest speaker. We have got Animaine Sparkstr of Bond of the Blade and Spider Circle. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing good. Glad we have a really awesome guest who's very familiar with our podcast at this point.
Okay, that's great. So let me know when they get here. This awesome guest yourself, because I want to meet them. I mean, I do know y'all podcast, and it's dope. I want to meet this other guest though. They sound like they might be on something.
You meet him every time you look in the mirror, man.
That's right.
Here I was just thinking that was my nightmares, but let me stop with the random bullshit.
Meeting your aspirational self. There we go. Yeah, so first thing is, like the other guys in the group here, I know that you are a creator. You produce some comics. So yeah, tell us a little bit about those.
No problem. Like you said, I am currently working on two comic books, the Spider Circle and Bond of the Blade. Bond of the Blade is a action superhero title done in a shonen anime / manga art style. Essentially about three high school seniors who become empowered by way of angelic warrior spirit to combat the criminal and supernatural evil elements in their city. And that is essentially like my baby. Like, I probably shouldn't describe my story as that, but it definitely feels like that. It's me pulling from everything that's really ever mattered to me and pulling from it, almost like how Bruce Lee describes his philosophy of fighting with Jeet Kune Do, how, you don't just stay locked into one specific style, but you pull from different sources, or how a person would learn from different sources. Well, that's how I do with stories. Like, this is definitely more along the lines of a anime style superhero action title, but I don't just pull from that. Like, I'm pulling from video games all the way back to the 8-bit era. I'm pulling from music. I'm pulling from history, mythology, and I'm using these things and experiences I've had to make something, totally brand new. And it's one of those things where that story in particular has existed in my head for like 10 years in some form or another. And I'll even keep it 100 with y'all. Matter of fact, I'll tell y'all what, like, my name was Hank Hill. Bond of the Blade used to actually be a self-insert story that was me and my nerdy ass, because I've been a nerd for all 33 years of my life. So I would think about like the things I went through, but because my mind is just on nerd status all the time, I would think of them like as an anime or as a video game. So like that thing went through in college, but as an anime, or that time that guy tried to kill you, but like a video game. And so after doing that so many times, that just became like its own story, But around the 2019 or so, I decided, Animaine, you're writing all this fan fiction, because I used to do that too. I used to write fan fiction. But,
hey man, I did a fan fiction of Mother of Madness on the other episode, so trust me, you'll never have to worry about writing the craziest fan fiction.
To be fair, Mike, you might qualify as the only person who's ever going to write Mother of Madness fan fiction.
You know what? Hey, for my research, I found some. I seriously found some.
You should totally write Marguerite Bennett and Khaleesi and let her know that you wrote a fan fiction of it, because she'll make that little scrunch face meme just for you. You're like, oh, isn't that wonderful? Good for you writing that Mother of Madness fan fiction.
It's your own personal meme.
He's like, if you write 4 issues of it, you're gonna 4 issues, you'll outlast the original.
That's right.
If there's a Mother of Madness fan fiction, I would like to see this. I think we should do a serious reading of it.
That's right. It's like, hey, we said last time that a train wreck can be a beautiful thing. So it's like, we'll do a train wreck episode. But you made a good point, though, because the whole thing about fan fiction is you kind of sort of have an idea for a story, and you're borrowing from that like main title so that you can fill in all the other elements. I guess you're saying at one point, it's like, hey, man, I could do this. I could do this with my own stuff.
Because I'm like, oh, I don't like how they did this in the show. Let me reimagine it, right? And at one point, I had so many notes and chapters and stuff for the fan fiction, stuff that never even saw the light of day. But I'm like, I legit have my own universe. I barely even used the canonical characters in this stuff after a certain point. And then I looked up at this completely, virtually untouched story file that had all these bios and all these random scenarios in it that I haven't touched since like 2014. And I'm just like, Animaine, stop, 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 stop. So I just put all that to the side. I started fleshing out all these character bios. My the main character of Bond of the Blade, Shen or Terry, was me. And so I was like, you know what, let me make him his own person. Like he can keep some stuff from me, but let me take him beyond the vein of self-insert. Cause like we see that all the time now too. Like we got all these self-inserts from the authors and stuff going in there. And like the issue for me isn't even that necessarily it's a self-insert. It's that it's a self-insert and it's pure wish fulfillment, and the person gets to be like either a perfect Mary Sue or gets to be an absolute asshole like what's her fuck from I Am Not Starfire, and still gets rewarded with everything. So not only is this a dumbass self-insert, but it's not even a character that anyone can get invested in because they go on no journey. There's no growth. They never realize they're wrong in anything. They get to be a complete son of a bitch and still get all the rewards at the end.
I just want to clarify. Are you trying to say that Mariko Tamaki did not stick the landing in making an independently voiced character with I Am Not Starfire? I'm shocked. I'm shocked
saying-
that would happen, that Mariko Tamaki, who's managed to destroy X-23 when she had that run, and
Oh,
then
God.
managed to then go into I Am Not Starfire, and somehow being as amazing a writer as she was, not managed to just make it a self-insert, ungrateful little witch character.
Right.
Well, and that's like you said, Animaine, like a self-insert isn't necessarily a bad thing, but when it becomes just gratification for your own self, you do things that might be in your character, but the other characters become extremely one-dimensional because they no longer react the way that they would react. They
Right.
react the way that the writer wants them to react. So they lose their own character. It just all gets swept up in the writer's character. And I think that's the big problem with it.
Exactly. You turn these characters who have, whether you're talking about like some little side character that you made but should still be treated as a person in the story, or like to stick with I'm Not Starfire, you have Starfire doing shit that I couldn't imagine any version of Starfire doing. Not the Cartoon Network cartoon, not the new Teen Titans version, not the one from the DC animated movies from a couple years ago. None of them, not the new 52 one, none of them. You have her act completely out of character because all Starfire is to you is an action figure for you to pose and do whatever with. Same for Blackfire, same for everybody, right?
I will say, Animaine, that if you watch Teen Titans Go for about 5 minutes, it looks like the I Am Not Starfire character is basically, I watched 5 minutes of Teen Titans Go and thought it was funny the way Starfire talked in that cartoon.
Mhm.
And I'm going to use that as the basis of my self-insert anger with my mother.
That's the only thing she did that I could actually recognize from Starfire, was the way she put the in front of everything.
Yeah, which was a complete, and the Teen Titans cartoon from the early aughts is actually really good, and I think anybody who would like to watch an anime kind of inspired, it was kind of in the same era that Avatar: The Last Airbender came out, where you had a lot of creators making animated content in the US that had grown up on watching anime for the first time. So, you got Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is definitely anime inspired, but still a Western cartoon. You had Teen Titans, which was anime inspired, but a Western cartoon. And when I say Western cartoon, I don't mean that they didn't animate it in Korea or in a foreign country. I just meant the creators, writers, and people running it. You also had the He-Man Masters of the Universe relaunch from 2002, which is amazing, and everybody should watch that one, not the new one. You had I think the end cap of that era was when they did the relaunch of what is it, Thundercats, exactly, which was a really great show that only lasted like one season because it didn't sell toys.
Good.
So good. But I think you can see the way they took that Teen Titans version of Starfire, who was still a well-balanced, well-rounded character, making mistakes, learning, everything you'd want in a cartoon aimed at tweens that was actually still well written. And then they took it to Teen Titans Go, where everybody became a mockery of what their worst character traits from Teen Titans, the cartoon, was. You had Cyborg, who just was yelling booyah, along with Beast Boy being complete idiots. You had Raven just being the gothy, like unhappy with the world girl. And then you made Starfire a complete like bumpkin who just said the in front of everything. I would like to go to the, to the place with the thing,
I just
that
woke
was,
up from the nap.
yeah, exactly. Just adding it was just stupid. And that's all they, and then you keep it's kind of like instead of evolution, it's a devolution. Each iteration of Starfire has been devolved by the creators to be worse. And so when you get to I Am Not Starfire, where Mariko Tamaki is doing the self-insert for the daughter, Starfire is literally just taking the way that she spoke in Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go and devolving it into just being mad at my mom. I have made the cookies for you, and just be like, fuck you, mom. I hate you. And it's like, wow, she made you cookies. I mean, given your body type, I think you'd like that.
Every third panel got you shoveling that shit in your face. I mean,
which is a complete trait of Mariko Tamaki. If you ever read her comic books, it does not go 2 pages without her talking about or having the characters eat. It sounds like it should be something like I'm just joking. Go watch and go read the X-23 comic run that she had, and tell me go through 3 or 4 pages and not find characters eating or talking about eating. It doesn't happen.
Right. And it's not like how heavy are the dumbbells you lift, where the whole point is to show how the main character is self-sabotaging themselves, but it's like some kind of disorder almost when you read it.
But one thing I did want to say, Animaine, is I think that most people who are creating, when they first start, it's completely natural to basically work from a standpoint of fan fiction. It's our most natural instinct is to work on ideas we're already familiar with and kind of evolve them into what we'd want. And that's one way writers can practice and get good at what they'd like to do. George Lucas, if you listen to I listened on the audiobook, but you can also get the regular book, The Secret History of Star Wars. Star Wars started as basically a fan fiction version of The Hidden Fortress, which is a Kurosawa movie. George Lucas wrote a script that was basically a shot-for-shot remake, slightly altered with Western characters, of The Hidden Fortress. And as he kept editing and drafting, it evolved into his own story, kind of like what you were talking about, where you started with something that you were a big fan of and were kind of branching from. But as you've worked on it and evolved it, it's completely separated and a separate thing from where you started.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And yeah, that is what you do when you're actually a creative person. You can start from this place of, oh, I love this story. I want to do my own spin on it, or I wish this could have been done better, or I want to see how it was done like this. So you'll change a few things, right? But it just balloons out. Or even how we were talking before about the self inserts, right? Like Shen started off was literally just me, but with muscles and shit. Like, but as I developed him, I gave him his own characteristics. Like I said, he still has some things in common with me, but he is very much his own person now. And if you put what he does and who he is side by side with me, there are several things he has that has nothing to do with me. I said, if I'm going to have a self-insert character or one who started as a self-insert, I'm going to make them their own person. And the same actually is true for several of the characters, because a lot of them were inspired either by people I've known in real life, or like even like some celebrities or figures in history. But as I wrote them more, I look at them today. Even just a couple of weeks ago, I looked up some old story files, like the first character Bibles for them, the ones that I just like abandoned the whole file because I just started a whole new one. And I'm like, how the hell did I go 10 years thinking this shit was good, let alone a full character? And I don't know, man. I feel like if more writers today, especially a lot of the industry heads, were genuinely trying to write a story and trying to write actual compelling characters that people could get behind, more of that would be happening. But I mean, obviously, that's not what we find ourselves in.
Well, they need to play more RPGs, I think, especially tabletop RPGs, because I imagine you've run into this before, where you write something, you storyboard something out, and halfway through you go, wait a minute, my character wouldn't do that. I have to change this because this isn't something they do. With these self-inserts, it doesn't matter. You're the writer, you're the main character. You can do whatever you do is what you do. But there are plenty of times, especially like playing D&D with my boys, but like there are plenty of times when I do something that I would never do, but my character would. And I'm like, this is what my character would do.
Yes, exactly. And matter of fact, I've had exact moments like that where I would be writing for, insert character X, right? And I would have a moment of putting too much of myself in them. And I would look, I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm thinking like myself. No, 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 no. I need to think like Shen. I need to think like Catherine. I need to think like these people. Because at this point, all my main characters, like I don't even write them anymore most of the time. Like they write themselves. I just watch what they do and record it. So when I'm doing that, I have to record it accurately, and I can't just go off of like my first instinct of what I think I would do in this situation. I got to think like them, But that's the beautiful thing of being a writer is putting yourself in these characters' minds that think and live so drastically different from you. And I like how you brought up tabletop RPGs. I've played a couple. My friend group isn't like the best with that stuff. We're trying. My girlfriend and I have tried to like facilitate a couple of campaigns. It always goes off the rails, like in a fun way at first.
Most of them do.
But like I needed to go off the rails and then keep going off the rails. Like it'll go off the rails and then people just lose interest. Like I need it to stay going off the rails and we keep having fun. But just got to find the right group of people. But that's how that story started, and now it is genuinely something that I'm proud of. Like that and the Spider Circle, which is oddly enough, that's something that I had thought of last year. It was my attempt to do a one and done book because I'm thinking, okay, Bond of the Blade, that's like super important to me. Maybe I shouldn't lead with that. And this was also before I decided to do them both as comics. Like initially, both of these were going to just be done in prose. But everyone I would tell about the stories, one of the first things they would say is, okay, when's the cartoon coming out? When's the comic? When's the video game? After I started getting like art commissioned for them, and I really liked how they looked. I'm like, I kind of want to just do this in comic book form now. Like it's gonna be more expensive because I can't draw word for damn, but it's just gonna have to be. It just is what it is at this point. Because now I've grown. I'm married to how they look now, and like I can't imagine only telling their stories in prose alone. So first it was my stab at a fantasy story because I've never really done like a fantasy type story before. Usually the stuff I do skews heavily towards shonen action versus or like Western superhero type action stuff. So I'm like, let me try to do something more fantasy related. And this was going to be a one and done book. I'm gonna just tell y'all right now without spoiling anything from future storylines, that plan is already gone. Like the Spider Circle isn't just going to be one book. Like the Spider Circle is like the series, and it's going to be different books for separate major arcs and stuff. But that's how that started, And weirdly enough, I was developing that, and like I said about Bond of the Blade, I'm just loving the fact that I'm making these characters, these stories. Unlike the fan fiction stuff, this is something that is mine. And because I love storytelling so much and I love seeing characters go on journeys so much, now I get to give to the world what's been nourishing my soul for 33 years. Like when I say I'm a nerd about this stuff, like I will sit there and I will read like the epics of the old mythology people, the same way I would read a manga, same way I would watch a multi-season TV show. Like I just love this very human trend of ours of telling stories and entertaining and like enriching each other through them.
Absolutely. I know, because it's something we often say on the podcast, which is beautiful art is true, first and foremost. And yeah, it sounds like you found a piece of that as well, is that you found something that's very important. And it sounds like in those stories as well, right? Like you found something true and like you want to then take it and capture it and then share it in a way that, right, people then want to share it in their own story going forward. It's like you're watching the mythology people are going to read about in the future, like coming together right now.
Yeah, definitely. And like, not like I'm trying to brag or toot my own horn or something, but like the fact that I've had some people say like, they love this character because so many of my characters are Black women. And I feel personally that Black women are one of the ones that get the rawest deal when it comes to the faux diversity thing. Like any example of a here you go, you're welcome character of this is for y'all, for you to quote unquote see yourselves, is like, what do Black women have? Like before we had the Storms and the Misty Knights and the Martha Joneses for my Doctor Who people out there. And we had great stuff. Sure, it was in, shorter supply than others. You could stand to see more. I'd love to see more. But then we get to this era now, and what do we get? We get Riri Williams. We get Nubia, finally brought back to more of the public consciousness, but she's done like 5 different ways in this year alone, and all of them suck.
Yeah, because instead of writing the character, they're just trying to write to the agenda. Just like we talked about, I Am Not Starfire. And then also, I think, Vinny, you had a couple of really good points about, what's going on with this whole kind of Nubia controversy and its relationship to Wonder Woman, and just kind of how screwy some of the Marvel and DC history is around some of these characters.
Yeah, so what's happening is, like you just mentioned with agenda, they're trying to shoehorn in agenda as the basis of the story, and they're ignoring, in Wonder Woman's case, continuity going back to the 40s. And all right, fine, you can say she's been relaunched and revamped, and it depends on which version you want to go with, that you can do it. You could say post-crisis Wonder Woman, which was around 1988 when they relaunched all of DC Universe. New 52 Wonder Woman, when they relaunched the entire DC Universe, where she became the daughter of Zeus, which was actually a really good run, and I would recommend it. Cliff Chiang, I think, did that one. Then DC Rebirth, which was the latest iteration of the DC Universe, where they brought her back and kind of basically brought back the continuity from Crisis DC Universe. The consistent thing is, through all of that, Wonder Woman's upbringing and background and mythology is not in dispute until we get to people who need to serve an agenda. And all of a sudden, Themyscira, which was the land of the Amazons, is now a land of T's in the alphabet, like being lived. And it's like, that is not accurate. They're relaunching Nubia to be a proxy insert where they keep changing her to be whatever is needed in the story. Either she's an activist teenager at a high school, which makes no sense, or she's now a life partner friend of Wonder Woman, and that doesn't really make sense. It just from a storytelling point, right? You want to make evergreen stories. You want stories that are going to stand the test of time, that are going to be able to be read and enjoyed 25 years later. But when you anchor something so in the moment, in the now, it becomes a non-relevant story in the future. If you want to go back and read the Spider-Man story where Gwen Stacy died, it was written in the 70s, late 60s, 70s. And even though the style of dress and the outfits and the characters and the way they looked is kind of in that era, the story is evergreen, and that's why it's lasted. Like when she falls off the bridge, or is thrown off the bridge by Green Goblin, spoiler alert, I mean, it's a 50-year-old book now.
50-year-old.
No worries there.
Yeah, no worries there. And Spider-Man, tries to save her, and he shoots the web, and it ends up snapping her neck and killing her in the act of saving her. That storyline stands the test of time and is relevant today. When you read X-Men Days of Future Past, which was only a 2-issue comic book too, by the way, a lot of people think that storyline was really long and involved. No, it was really it was 2 issues. It was a part 1 and a part 2, because in the old days, we didn't have trade paperbacks and these long storylines so you had to collect to. You did your storyline for as much as you needed to actually make it pop. So Days of Future Past is a 2-issue storyline, and people still read it. Watchmen is an epic, and even though it has a lot of the 80s kind of references, just like The Dark Knight Returns, its storyline is relevant because of the good story and grounding it in the characters and their choices, not because they're protesting Nixon's 5th term in the White House because he makes wrong political choices. That's why I think even one of the reasons comic book sales have gone down isn't just the fact that they're hitting you over the head with the agenda. It's because the storytelling, by making it an agenda-driven one, makes it less relevant over time. It doesn't make it classic. It doesn't make it really good. Like the last really epic classic comic book storyline that I can think of that everyone seemed to universally like was Marvel's crossover event was Civil War. which it was because the idea, it wasn't, it was, the idea was very specific to the superhero universe. It was like, should you register to be a superhero or not? And Mark Millar wrote it where you could actually make an argument on either side and be right. You could be right on Tony Stark's side because, yeah, you have kids who are running around irresponsibly blowing up schools and killing children because they don't think about how their powers could impact things. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense to register and try to control and make sure that stuff doesn't happen. And then you got Captain America's perspective, who grew up in the 1930s and 40s, right, as a soldier in World War II. So when he's thinking about a government controlling things and all the natural, slippery slope arguments that can come from that kind of situation, you can see his point too. And it makes for great, compelling story. It is not about, well, here they are protesting the government for X, Y, and Z current year political reason. It was philosophical debate where there's no easy answer, and that creates a good story.
First of all, I do want to point out real quick that that whole Gwen Stacy moment, I know it's iconic, because I haven't read that scene in years, but I can still see it as clearly as I could the day I first saw it in my head. And two, whether it's Gwen Stacy or Mary Jane, I've seen that scene recreated in some way like 6 times in different mediums. I've seen them retool it and redo it in the 90s cartoon. It was Mary Jane instead of Gwen Stacy, and because it was Saturday morning cartoon, she couldn't fall and die. She had to fall in a portal, and also the Green Goblin couldn't impale himself on his own glider. He had to be knocked into a portal. But they did it then. They basically redid it without the death again for Mary Jane for the Raimi trilogy. Then they literally did it again in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, just not off a bridge, just in the clock tower. But the fact that that scene, which was created in the late 60s, has just echoed throughout every version of Spider-Man damn near. And they about to do it again, it looked like, in No Way Home.
I'm going to be honest. So as a Spider-Man fan, and Mike and Joey probably didn't have this experience, but Animaine, you probably did. In Amazing Spider-Man 2, when Gwen Stacy popped up in that outfit in the jacket, I was like, oh shit.
Yep.
They're killing this girl.
When I saw the promotional material, dude,
I was like, you don't dress Gwen in that outfit unless you're killing her.
That jacket, I seen them boots. I was like, she ain't.
Oh no, she's dead.
She ain't doing it. She dead.
What was the show?
Kenny from South
Quantum
Park.
Leap. You're having a quantum leap moment at that point.
No, it's more like Family Guy did it in one of their, I think the first season, when they're cutting to like Star Trek, and they're like, the away team's going to consist of me, Bones, and red shirt Ensign Ricky, and Ensign Ricky's like, oh shit, I'm gonna die
because he's got the red shirt. Yeah,
because I'm wearing the red shirt. And what's cool is, that's what great storytelling can do, and it's something where when you're in on it, these things, because like Animaine is talking about, if you're a student of mythology and classics, writers have been taking from these storyline elements forever. And I've noticed a lot of things where I didn't see it at first. Once I started reading some myths and legends and kind of getting a background in that kind of thing, you start seeing where even the comic book writers in the 60s and 70s were pulling from those stories and those archetypes, and especially Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby was really into that when he did New Gods and the Eternals. And they're peppering that stuff in there because writers do that. You build on the things that are cultural shorthand for people to understand where you're going. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I would say this kind of gets on the philosophical side of it, but when you do painting, right, like you have the painter's palette, right? You have a set of colors, and then from those colors, you're going to make the image. And so what you put on that palette dictates a lot of how your image is going to turn out. Warm colors, cool colors, highly colorful versus gray, so on and so forth. There's also a really great book. Now, this is an architecture book, but I recommend any creator read this. It's called The Timeless Way of Building. And he also explains that in building, there is a builder's palette. He calls it the pattern language. So when you say things like sidewalk, door, hallway, and the thing is, I say that and a rough image immediately comes to your mind, and not just an image of what it is, but also its purpose. And he also explains that not every pattern language is necessarily coherent. So for example, the reason every house, right? The front door has like a stoop or a little porch or something. Is it turns out that is a transitional space, and a good building is not complete without a transitional space. Now we take that, we get into storytelling. An actual painting has the artist palette. The buildings have pattern languages. And I think within stories, the same thing is true too. There is a sort of palette or language in which, by just showing a certain type of person, by having them do certain types of things or putting them into certain types of challenges, you already know certain basic things about what's going on. Like that is your palette, that is the picture you're painting. In some of these kind of more recent stories, they're like, hey, I want you to create this great image, but like I'm only going to give you one color and it's completely contrary to what we're trying to do, but like you have to make it with this color.
Well, especially with storytelling too, because with a story, what's my message should never be the first thing you address. First, you come up with a character. Animaine briefly mentioned like he had character bios, and that was probably one of the first things he did was just drew up a character and then started figuring out who that character was. That should almost always be your starting point, especially in fiction. Then you start saying, okay, how would they handle situations? You start building the story of what they do around who they are. But it's almost backwards now where it's like, what's my message? What are they going to do? Okay, well, I might have time to figure out who they are at the end, but really who they are doesn't matter as long as we get the message.
Exactly. They are literally working backwards. And it's just like those cringy ass Kirk Cameron movies and all them other Christian movies where all they care about is just the message, the spreading of the gospel.
It twists everything else to fit, and
Yeah, it's
everything
kind
else
of
ends up
like-
twisted, and kind of you get an uncanny valley of characters.
It's kind of like, to use that painter's example, like let's imagine I say, hey guys, I want you to paint a forest for me, but I'm only going to give you purple and blue.
That'd be an awesome forest.
That'd be a whole different kind of forest right there, right? but you're right, like that I think is one of the things that happens. And what that does is, you're right, like it just creates the bankruptcy of the story. And that's why like we had a lot of fun on some of those other episodes trying to do fixes where we're like, hey, like there could have been a story here, but because they've got the priorities and because they've got like the order of the elements out of arrangement, like they fail even at their intended purpose.
I will say this, bad example, Mike, because if you tell me to draw a forest and you only give me purple and blue, I can draw a forest at night.
We got to think more about that illustration, though. We got to make it as off the wall as possible.
All right, with just as long as we have happy little trees, Bob Ross style, happy little trees.
I'm thinking like a forest of like psychedelic mushrooms.
So just to get back to the point we were making, like one of the I think
Wait, there was a point?
One of the I'm gonna make one. I'm gonna circle it back and make one, which is one of the best examples that we've all seen in recent pop culture about an agenda derailing what could have been a great story. Is and getting back to the self-insert characters, was the new sequel trilogy for Star Wars. We had probably a potentially amazing storyline character with Finn, who was completely derailed.
I wanted that storyline so
exactly.
bad.
Yeah, me too, man.
The stormtrooper who rebels against programming and because of the moral imperative is a great storyline to go into. And we made him a janitor and just shunted him off into a terrible character. Like even Force Awakens was, in hindsight, a pretty bad movie, but it had potential threads that could have been pulled to make it better. The problem was Finn, especially when they made it, once they said he was just the waist detail guy, that was a terrible choice in The Force Awakens. And then in the subsequent movies, they took away all of his growth that he had even in the first movie and made him a coward again, who was running away, who really didn't serve anything.
He became more and more tokenized with every minute that he had on screen. Like they started strong.
You know, to go to Mike's Zero's Journey example, he became the simp that was only there to acknowledge the greatness of the of Rey, the Zero,
and every other woman that he ended up working with along the way. Like what did the Asian girl do the second she met him? She tased the shit out of him.
The one moment that he could have had, even where he could have went out in a blaze of glory, self-sacrifice, she has to come up and steal it.
She literally cut him down.
Just cut his
She
ass.
emasculated him, and then I saved what I love because no, what? You didn't do anything. You just killed everybody.
Yeah, and then he should have said, "Bitch, that's what I was trying to do."
What the fuck? You think I was just driving over there for fun?
It's like go. No, it's about. Oh, there's so many. I got to stop before I just get into all the things that are wrong with that. But it goes to exactly what we're talking about. There was a Kathleen Kennedy self-insert with Ray, or any other writer in the story group you wanted to get into, who completely, between her and then Admiral, gender studies, as she's called online, with Holda, where she can't just take 3 minutes to tell a trusted rebel, commander that her plan is to save everybody, and
she
here's
can't
how.
wear a fucking uniform.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like,
No,
I
man,
mean,
look, man, uniforms are part of the patriarchy. We off that, okay?
yeah, I know that
Well,
evening wear is very
in order
practical
for a
on a ship
military
setting.
to function properly, you all have to look the same. It's an unfortunate truth of the matter, but you are a cog in the machine if you're a member of the military, even if
and
you're a
it's-
bigger cog than
and then-
everybody else.
Well, here's the other thing. Princess Leia, who was a freaking princess in the first movie, she's only in the dress because she was on a diplomatic mission and she got caught in the diplomatic mission. As soon as the movies progress from there, she's always in pants in a practical like uniform. In Empire Strikes Back, she's in the practical uniform until Lando gives her the clothes because he wants to go, "What have we here?" and ogle her and try to pick her up right in front of Han, which is hilarious. It's Billy D. That's what he does. And
Yep.
then when the Ewoks dress her up in a dress while they're about to eat everybody else, which is kind of weird, but they do that too.
Yeah.
But again, that also goes back to the pattern language, though, right? That if somebody is in a military, that first is there's a universal pattern that says, hey, we are all this unit together. And then second, you're right, like symbols, badges, ranks allow you to look at someone and immediately know, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do.
There's a psychological aspect to it too that a lot of people overlook. It is supposed to make you feel like you're the same as everybody else. Like, we don't want special standouts in the military. We want you to function as part of a larger machine. You can't be the bright shining star with the good ideas. You need to follow orders and accomplish the mission.
And move
Right.
as one being. Yeah.
Crazy to think that something called Star Wars would accurately represent, military war stuff. I don't know why we would ever expect that to work. Also, it's not like they had been doing that before they got here. Like, no, it's Ryan Johnson time now. It's Kathleen Kennedy time now. It's just time. Everything is just always time. It's time to have the gender studies woman. It's time to take this black man who was about to be one of the greatest forces in Star Wars and put him back in his place. Who told that black man that he could actually be an important character? No.
You could explore like PTSD from that battle. You could get into how he has tactical knowledge of the methods and strategies that the First Order is using. Like, he could have become such a key component of the rebellion strategy in the first place, and they just took all that and were like, it was a fucking janitor. They got this big
Right.
Death Star that blows up galaxy.
Did y'all see the deleted scene from like what was supposed to be his actual final standoff with Phasma in the Last
God,
Jedi?
no. I never went back to those movies after watching the theatrical releases, and I've never seen the third one.
I will say this, that there actually was a version where there was a halfway, almost kind of competent standoff where Finn actually stood up to Phasma and straight up embarrassed her ass in front of her little soldier dudes, right? And it was only for like 5 seconds, but they actually had a nice little halfway interesting back and forth. And he actually got to finish her off in a way that wasn't just completely drowning in absurd subversion of expectations, right? Like, they couldn't just have her in
Having him pull it off would have subverted our expectations. It would have been good.
Right, exactly, right. But we can't have that. We can't have him actually do that. We have to make it be ha ha ha, just like Captain Marvel, right? We can't have her and whatever the fuck Jude Law's character's name was. We can't have them actually fight. We can't have her, prove anything to him because I have nothing to prove to you. So, she just zaps him into the freaking mountain, and that's just the end of the fight. Ha ha, I guess funny.
What's hilarious to me is, being a comics fan, and growing up. Captain Marvel, there were two Captain Marvels that you knew of from Marvel Comics, at least in my age demographic. The first was Marvel, the Kree soldier who died, years back. And then there was Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, who was the head of the Avengers, who was a hero in her own right, who had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers was in a coma still from when Rogue bitched her and took all her powers. So, which was covered very nicely in the X-Men cartoon in the 90s. And
yes, that was, oh my God, that was so good. I still
yeah,
remember that.
when she was, and where she dressed like she should have as Captain, as Miss Marvel, where she had the nice sash and had the lightning bolt like Marvel logo, and that's what Carol Danvers was. Carol Danvers, for about my entire growing up period from like the 80s and 90s, was just the answer to why Rogue could fly and was bulletproof. That was all she was there to answer that question. That was her entire role in the Marvel universe, aside from maybe getting into some questionable storytelling about time travel, Kang and his son Eric the Ret. Anyway, but Monica Rambeau was a great character. I think Eric July, who's a great YouTuber, he goes Young Rip on YouTube, has a lot of great videos going over this, because in our age demographic, Monica Rambeau was like Storm in the 80s. She was powerful, strong, and no one had any problem with her as a great character. And no one ever thought, and it never came up. And all the times I had nerd debates in comic book stores, and all the times I was talking about who could beat who in a fight, never once did I go, and she's a strong, powerful woman of color. It was just like, no, Storm can F you up because she's an Omega level mutant who can control the weather. And when she's not dealing with her claustrophobia, which is her weakness, she can rain down the lightning, the storms. She can basically run the world if she really felt like it. The idea that they gave her claustrophobia, that as a child, as living in poverty in Africa, where she was forced to work for the Shadow King as a result of a terrible experience where she was in a cave-in with a house or something that collapsed. She had massive claustrophobia, and in the middle of a fight, if something happened that got her into that, it would shut her down. It was a great weakness to give someone a psychological, like, basically kryptonite. Exactly. And it had nothing to do with her having to deal with any of this agenda stuff. And then later on, when she gets with Black Panther, T'Challa, and becomes the queen of Wakanda, there's a whole, that was still all right. They were still writing a good storyline. And then the agenda just started making story. And like now we've got the Marvel mutants on Krakatoa just knifing cashiers in a store because they use plastic bags. It's like, oh my God, where have we gone, in this crazy. I look back at in the X-Men cartoon in the 90s was so great. I look at when they brought Bishop in, not once did it come up that he's a black guy and we need to address like systematic racism. It's like, no, he's a mutant dealing with, mutant problems from the future, and a sentinel named Nimrod who's coming to kill him because he's trying to change the past so everybody doesn't go into mutant genocide camps. It's like, now if you try to tell that story, somebody would have to be sat down and Bishop would be like, let me educate you about what it's like being a black man in the future. It's like, well, that wouldn't be really good for the story. He's going to have other priorities.
And then bring on the text bubbles that cover the entire page, because we're going to talk about things.
But like, even if you want to bring up Static, like, he's probably my greatest example that I can think
Static
of.
Shot was so popular too.
Like,
so popular. That cartoon was amazing.
I've always remember his origin story, and I loved how whether you have the animated version or the one in the comics, the fact that it was essentially what the far leftists say comics, quote unquote, have always been, but it was done in a very genuine way. Like, they took Virgil, who was getting bullied to shit, who had enough. So the dude says, hey, meet me here at this time. We all gonna be throwing down. I'll pass you a piece, pop, pop, no more bullying, right? So right there, you have, and I remember because the Static comic came out, I believe, the early 90s. So obviously I was like a baby when this happened. But like, I know that things like black on black crime and gun violence and gang violence were very hot button topical issues for that time. So the writers at Milestone were taking these inherently political things and weaving them into their story, using them as this character's origin, where Virgil is about to do a terrible thing, but we understand why he's about to do it. And then he decides not to do it. But now he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. Big bang. Now you got the powers.
But think about like what you're talking about too. What they took in the storytelling was basically they're putting him in a setting that is relevant to that year, but it's still, it's still like I talked about with Evergreen. You're talking about a bullied kid who you've seen being wronged by these people, and it's a natural instinct as humans to want to have the revenge or the power fantasy where you can take on the bully and win. And that's something
to eventually just break down and go, enough is enough. I can't take it anymore, and go to extremes.
And that's a universal truth for people of the human condition. Like if you grew up, you were either bullied or you were the bully. And so either way, you understand the dynamic and can relate to the story. And then you just put it into a setting that is authentic to the character, and it'll work just fine. But it means that when I read Static Shock, being a middle-class person living, in Northern Virginia, I was able to still relate to what the story was, and I could enjoy Static Shock. And I did. I have, Static Shock comics. I watched the cartoon, and I was a little older when I did than probably the official Target demo, but I enjoyed it. I really liked when they did crossovers with the other DC characters. Once DC, when they were in their buying frenzy and got all the indies, when they brought those characters in on the Saturday morning cartoons, and then eventually bought them, as a comic book company. But Static Shock is a great one. And you could start talking about like some of the other, like Icon, who is the Superman character, was really good. I especially love how he got brought into Young Justice, the cartoon, 10 years ago, before they decided, current year version of Young Justice, when they had Rocket and Icon, and they were just there. They didn't make a big deal about who they were. They were just there with powers doing, superhero things, and it worked great.
It used to be too that you related to a character because of who the character was. Melanin levels were not really a concern of any kind. I related to Static Shock a lot because I was a nerd who got bullied a lot in school. That's why I loved the show. Skin tone never came into the equation. It was irrelevant.
Right. And then in that same vein, I love Static. I loved him because of who he was before any racial aspect came into the picture. Yes, I did realize, oh, okay, we got a superhero that I can relate to a bit more, I guess, more culturally than anything else, because the fact that he was, the urban superhero, and he talked like I talked and like people I knew talked. So that helped me connect with him just on a slightly different level. But at the same time, my favorite hero since I've been 6 years old was Spider-Man. And then right after that was Nightcrawler and Storm from the X-Men. So, and last time I checked, I am neither a white kid from Queens nor a blue elf demonic looking motherfucker from Germany. And yet somehow I was able to connect with these people. Why? Because I was a nerd.
Well, there's the universal through lines. And that's the thing, is that it is not something so surface level as skin color that makes you gravitate toward a character. It's those universal through lines that are at their core that really bind you to a character.
I would look at the way that Nightcrawler would be treated like shit by people, but would still have this really jovial personality with people. He was still a gentleman, swashbuckling out here. And that reminded me very much of myself. And also, if you want to talk about the aspirational side of things, they were both athletic. They were in great shape, but not super bulky. That's the type of heroes I was used to seeing. But then I see Spider-Man and Nightcrawler, and they're flipping around and doing cartwheels and moves that look like they came off of Tekken or something. And I'm like, I want to be like that, because I'm a round little child, and I want to lose this weight because I'm tired of being called Sherman Clump when I go to school. So I want to be like Spider-Man.
That's why I always liked Gambit, because he was always just so smooth and just played off any mistakes that he made and didn't act like he cared if things went wrong. I loved Gambit for that reason. I know he's not super popular anymore, but I liked Gambit.
Gambit is good, but they sidelined him because they deemed him problematic from of his character traits, and now they just make him the guy who says nice things to Rogue to
It's
make her
one of
feel
the
better.
only things I remember from the animated series because it's been so long, but I will never forget when they were playing pool and Gambit's like, let me show y'all how this is done. You just put a little charge in the queue here. And then Rogue came up and rubbed his junk and he blew up the pool table.
You want to win, right? So that's how you
Hey,
do it.
look.
But this is great because like when not to date myself again, Image Comics was just starting when I was right at the prime comic book buying age, around 12, 13. And I remember getting every issue of Spawn, and the lead character Spawn is Al Simmons. He's a African American military special forces guy who was murdered by Priest and on the orders of Jason Wynn. Spoiler for a 40-year-old comic, 30-year-old comic now. But he comes back to go back to try to get back with his wife, and he didn't know they had a child at that point and everything. But at no point when I was buying Spawn did it ever occur to me that I should not, because he's black and I'm white. I did not think that I should have any issue with it. I related
Yeah, there
to
never
the comic
used to
book,
be that.
and I liked it. I liked the comic book. It was, Todd McFarlane wasn't the best writer, but at 12 years old, it was perfectly well written for me at 12. And the
And the
artwork
art
was
was good.
awesome. Yeah.
No.
But that's the thing. There never used to be that it's not for you attitude. Like it
Right.
used to be like, if we want as many people as we can as an audience because we
Yeah,
want
when
to
I-
share the
Yeah,
story.
there's
when I
a
bought New Warriors, when I got New Warriors, it didn't like, and no one told me that because Night Thrasher was black, I should not like Night Thrasher. He was the most badass of all the New Warriors. I didn't like Speedball. I liked Night Thrasher.
it really is two different conceptions of society, right? Like on the one hand, what we're all talking about is we find these universals and we find a bond. We say, okay, that's what I want my identity to be around, is, hey, like we both like this thing. And so it's right, this story, this type of character, right, overcoming this type of challenge, that will be our common bond, and that'll be a part of my identity. And the thing is, you'll have many different forms of this, everything from what school did you go to, where'd you grow up, which religion you believe in, right? And there's one conception of society that we want to have all these different bonds because then everybody will have at least one thing in common. And what we're seeing right now, again, is it's kind of like we're going to paint a painting with just one color. There is this need, and I see it especially in certain academic circles and in other places as well, this idea that's like, we want to dictate to you what your identity is and what you will find important. And I think the overall answer for all of us for all of that is no. We will decide for ourselves.
Exactly. That's definitely what it is. There are not enough words in the English language for me to accurately communicate how overall this shit I am, especially with all the far left wokeness telling me as a black person whether it's which characters I'm supposed to like or which movements I'm supposed to support, which candidates I'm supposed to vote for if I vote at all. All of that is predetermined to me by them simply because of the color of my skin. Fuck whatever I've gone through in life. Fuck what I actually believe, or fuck where I'm trying to go in life. Because I'm black, I have to support this pure pandering.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't, then I'm a coon who hates my own race.
It is nuts. And I know one phrase I like to use for it is something called corporate socialism. So the idea that, right, socialism was the idea we'll have nothing left but the state. But in this case, it's going to be the state plus the favored corporations. And they're going to say, hey, this is who we say you are. Therefore, this is the product you must consume.
I think you almost have it backwards. I think it's more like the corporations have started dictating what the state will do to
Yeah.
a certain degree.
I think like they're one and the same.
Behind closed doors, but I think Google and Silicon Valley in general, I think they're telling the politicians how to decide things now.
Oh, actually, I'll tell you a little bit about that because there was a time I was actually studying to be a lobbyist for a while. And there was one.
Gross.
Yeah, I know. I don't do it now. But I like to share this experience, though. It was a politician that it was just him and this lobby group behind closed doors. He's like, okay, like we're all cool here. So let me tell you, And he just explained like, hey man, like these people give me all this power over all these different things. I don't have a damn clue about any of it. Because they're like, who in the world is going to know, education, environment, social issues, family
The
issues?
people who actually read. That's who.
I know, but I'm saying like no person can know it all to make intelligent decisions in every single one. So he's like, you know what we're going to do? I just need experts. I'm like, and so I asked him, it's like, okay, where do the experts come from? Industry. Are you sure they're giving you good information? It's like, it's good.
They're giving me whatever information benefits them. That's
But there's
really
actually
what's going on.
there's a word for it. It's called regulatory capture. That the people being regulated are the only ones interested enough in the regulation to provide the guidance. Therefore, the industry writes the rules. And you're right, and that is part of corporate socialism. That corporations and state are one and the same. And in some cases, if you look at board positions, including on big nonprofits, and then you look at political positions, there is a lot of crossover. And it is, again, just this idea of, hey, we're going to decide for you what kind of person you are. And once we've decided that, we're going to decide for you what your life will be. And you're a terrible person if you don't go along with it.
Well, and here's the problem. I'll try to pull the Jesus thing and tell a little parable, right? But it will pale in comparison, I'm sure. But like the problem with that whole regulatory capture theory is, let's say I'm the dumbest kid in the science class, but we have a science fair coming up in a week. What's easier, for me to make the best project or for me to sneak into the school the night before the big thing and destroy everybody else's projects? If mine's the only one that gets turned in, I win. That's basically what corporations do all the time with lobbying. We need to get these regulations put in place because it'll fuck our competition.
I was going to say, and I think from our Mother of Madness episode, I made a spinoff called Maidens of Mayhem. And there may be a little bit of that in that story if I write it.
There should be.
I was going to say, it's funny how little it gets talked about.
This sounds like one of those things where I've thought about it, but I haven't thought about it this deeply. But hearing you lay it out like that, yeah, it makes perfect sense, and it makes things even scarier. When we first started talking about this stuff, I thought back to last year during the whole, as Gothics likes to call them, peaceful protests TM. I remember, I don't know how much y'all game, but I remember I play this game Smite. It's like a MOBA.
Oh, I play the shit out of Smite. We got.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Oh, dude, we gotta link up.
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yo, that game is ridiculous. They just released the Titan Atlas today. He already a problem. Like best support in the game, gonna ruin everything. But I remember last year I was logging in. I log in every day, play a little bit, and there was this mandatory screen. You could not skip it about how high res.
Oh yeah, I stopped playing video games during that time because I just couldn't stand to look at it.
Like you log in, you can't miss it. Talking about how they support Black Lives Matter and how it's important to do all this stuff. And I'm just like, I've been playing this game since 2017. Now, shit has gone down since 2017 that is on this scale or greater, but I have never in my long-legged life of playing this game seen an unskippable screen about how the company supports this social movement and is behind the protesters. There's no way you can convince me that the corporations and these manufactured movements are not hand in hand with this shit. After I saw that, there was no way. Because I used to actually be a far leftist, pretty progressive, not like to the point where I wanted to burn everything down, but it was pretty cringe. I'll just say that, it's pretty cringe. But like,
welcome to reality.
It's a phase a lot of us went through.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was already coming off of it. And Black Lives Matter in particular, I don't think I was completely anti-BLM yet. I was more like, I can't really openly support it no more or actively support it, but I get the idea. But then I saw that and I'm like, yeah, nope.
Hey, I love the message. I just hate the means.
Yeah, between that and the whole we're trained Marxists, quote unquote, but then I'm also out here on a mansion shopping spree. I'm just like, there's no way I can support this shit.
Well, if you've seen the trained Marxist in some of the communist countries at the height of communism, it's actually that part is very consistent.
Unfortunately, yes. But I was kind of hoping that you train Marxists, but you like, you're like a new Marxist who like Even though I still disagree with the movement, you at least genuinely believe it.
Yeah,
no.
but don't worry. There's new Nazis now too, and we all saw how they turned out. New anything doesn't necessarily mean good.
Usually it means you took the worst ideas from the previous group and it's like, we're gonna make it work this time.
Yeah, let's dial it up
No.
to 11.
No, just please stop.
Wait, you mean to tell me this thing that has never worked in the history of its existence, I'm not going to be the one to make it work this time?
Well, that's because like those people were corrupt. And like when I buy the Lexus for myself, like I need it. You're right. That's the only reason.
Exactly right. See, now I overstand, Mike. Thank you so much. Now I overstand.
There's another one, like, because I've gotten into this conversation with a few of the more militant atheists, right? But they're like, well, we as a society, our culture is so far advanced compared to the people back in the day, and they just used it to explain this, that, and the other. And I'm like, there are people from way back in the day that are far more intelligent than you or me, and they believed. Like, I don't see how our culture advancing has changed the fact that there are many people throughout history that were fucking geniuses compared to how dumb I am.
Yeah, because we're getting back into, once again, the ordering of the elements to say, just like in the case of some of these terrible books, like I Am Not Starfire, the idea that like I can just do whatever I want and everybody has to like me and they have to celebrate me for that matter.
Well,
right, there's that philosophy versus I'm not the center of the universe and like I've got to do good to others and I've got to earn my respect, right? So that's the difference.
To pick up on that thread, I'm gonna give us a big W. I'm gonna kind of shift the conversation just slightly to something I wanted to talk about, because I think this is a good part to kind of address that cause and effect, right? Where you don't want people to think you can just get away with whatever you want, which is the Disney Starcruiser Hotel.
Oh yes, that's right. We haven't gotten to that yet.
So I'm gonna because I think this is a perfect example of a corporation trying to make people want something that they want you to want, and then the people deciding once they see it, no, I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna tell you. All right. So for those not familiar, Disney, when they bought the rights to Star Wars, when they bought Lucasfilm, I think it was in 2013, 2014. And they immediately kind of announced that they were going to build a Star Wars land, which now became Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. As part of that, they actually also announced a Star Wars themed hotel called the Galactic Starcruiser, which is a, I guess, cruise-like experience for people to go. You pay, and this is I kid you not, I'm on the Disney website right now. So just to tell you what the rates are. For two people for 2 nights in one cabin, it's $4,809. For 3 guests in one cabin, which would be 2 adults and a child. So if you had a 3-year-old, this is the cost, $5,299. And if you had 4 guests,
and these are all expenses paid, right?
No, this is for your lodging, your meals while you're there, not upgraded meals, just basic meals, and the tickets to Galaxy's Edge Hollywood Studios. So you get into one park, not all the parks, not a park hopper pass, and you don't get all the extras. Like it's like a cruise, so you can do excursions. You could buy, like, if you wanted to do the build your own lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge, that's $299 extra, but you can book it. If you wanted to build your own droid at Galaxy's Edge, that's the $99, but you can book it. This is the same cost if I just walked in.
Now, if we're gonna build a lightsaber for $300, like we get to take it home, right?
Yes, no, this is the build your own lightsaber and you take it home. But honestly, the better deal is to get the what they call the legacy lightsabers, which are the movie branded ones. I got a Darth Vader one for like $120, and it's amazingly accurate prop replica with the light up blade that can come in and out with a little display case. It's a better deal.
Dude, the best deal is to go on Google and look it up. There are so many guides on how to make your own prop quality lightsaber at home. You just gotta go over to Home Depot.
But I'm lazy and I have money and I can do it. So don't at me on this.
The American dream.
Yeah, I'm gonna at you. You're getting at it.
I could build it, or I could pay someone to do it for me. But I won't pay everything. All right, so here's the thing. So a few months ago, in November 11th, like this is after they had announced like the opening of the hotel next year, and they started taking pre-bookings. Bob Chapek, who's the CEO of Disney, was on his earnings call, for the year, and said they had already sold out the first 4 months of the Galaxy Starcruiser hotels, Star Wars one. It opens in March, so that means March, April, May, June were already all completely sold out. Then about last week, they released the first promo video to the Starcruiser hotel, where they actually showed video of what it would look like and what you were getting for this money that you were paying.
It barely registered as Star Wars.
No, it was basically Fifth Element meets Star Trek at best. And
with a little Battlestar Galactica mixed in there.
So to get into the fun that this is, I'm now looking at the reservation website for Disney. I can get so it opens March 1st, right? This is the beginning of the hotel. I can get bookings on March 15th, March 21st, March 27th, or March 29th. Remember, these are 2 days experience at a time, so it's like a cruise. You have to book the day. So that means out of the bookings available, like a quarter of them have now opened up in March. In April, they have April 10th, April 22nd, April 26th, and April 30th. And in May, they have the 2nd, the 8th, the 10th, the 12th, and the 16th. They are hemorrhaging reservations. And then once you get to June, like June has a couple, but July, August, September, which are the last months available, every booking is available. Bob Chapek had basically said in this earnings call that they had completely sold out the first 4 months and that all the bookings through September were virtually sold out. And in the week since they released that video of what you would actually be getting from the Disney Star Wars experience, people are just canceling. Because this week is when the minimum deposit would become due, where you'd have to put your $1,500 down to reserve the experience for real. And after that video, people are like, no, I think I'm okay. You can take your Star Wars hotel, and I'm just not going to play this game. And this hotel was massively expensive to build and will be massively expensive to operate. So if they're not getting this money, if it's like a cruise ship, if they're not getting full bookings, they are having a big financial problem. There's a lot of people, I think, joking. One of the YouTubers I watch, Clownfish TV, they were joking that this is going to be on the Defunct Land YouTube channel pretty soon as a rebranded thing that's going to become like a corporate, like just a corporate getaway room.
Speaking of what else just went into Defunct Land for a recent episode with Joey.
Oh, Joey, do you know what got canceled, Joey?
Oh, Defunct Land, yeah. I'm actually sad. I am mourning the loss of the Cowboy Bebop live action adaptation because Vinny, you were gonna have to watch season 2.
I am dancing on its grave because I don't
Ding Dong,
have to
the
watch
witch is
it.
dead.
Or Faye Valentine, as played by Danielle Pineda, definitely would qualify.
I mean, she I think was a big contributor to the death of that particular franchise.
Joey, would it be inappropriate to go on Twitter and send her the meme that says "Welcome to the ouch, MFers," for getting canceled?
Here's what I've noticed, right? Like there's a couple modus operandi that Netflix works on, right? Number one seems to be the EA method, which is where they buy up a bunch of IP that isn't theirs and then they just destroy it. EA did that with so many of my beloved game franchises.
Man, Command and Conquer, dude.
Command and Conquer is the one that always comes to the forefront of my mind because they put that on the table and they just butchered it. And well, Netflix did that with several of the animes that I love. Like Death Note was fucking awful. Bleach was pretty terrible. Because I think they did a Bleach one, but I don't know if Netflix was directly responsible for that.
Did they do Full Metal Alchemist?
They did Full Metal Alchemist. I couldn't get past like the first episode. It was fucking trash. Beloved animes that are some of the best. It just
it's not like they're even aiming for like low hanging fruit. They're going to the top. They're picking from the cream of the crop. I heard that they're gonna do Yu Yu Hakusho or something. I'm like, nope.
Yeah, they'll kill that.
Okay,
I'm sure.
Now I'm curious.
Let's be honest. One Piece is gonna be the worst one they ever make.
Well, it has to be.
I can't get into anything that has 600 episodes to catch up on. So,
or isn't it 1,000 on the manga, like chapters? I can't even keep track.
It was probably at 600 when I finally started like looking at it as a potential watch. But yeah, there's a lot of fucking episodes. I'm of the old school. I like the old
Now,
26 and done.
I haven't watched it, but if it's like Dragon Ball Z and you can do a supercut where you just like power through the powering up, you could probably get through those 600 episodes in like a few days.
Dude, Dragon Ball Super, I think it was fucking awesome. I loved it.
No, I love
Um,
Dragon Ball, but there is a lot of powering up.
there
And
is,
At
and
least-
certain arcs
yeah.
are better than others. Like I know a lot of people liked the Cell games. I didn't. I liked the Frieza saga a lot.
I mean,
So-
everybody liked the Frieza
Yeah,
saga. That
and
was what
Frieza
was on
saga.
what was it? That was on
Toonami.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that
where
Toonami.
Although I
that
was
was-
convinced Frieza was a girl for years. And
Thank
they're
you,
like-
I'm not alone anymore.
Yes, I 100% thought Frieza was a girl.
And they're like, it's Frieza, he's back. And I'm like, he?
I feel like Frieza might have been the first trans character in Dragon Ball Z because that was
Right, or
definitely
non-binary, you
yeah,
know?
non-binary.
Representation.
Yeah, the voice actor for that one. Yeah.
I mean the voice acting, the mannerisms, everything about how
Mannerisms,
they
like,
did that was
there's
girl.
no way you could tell me, especially when he get to the final form. Ain't no way you could have told me he wasn't supposed to have titties.
I mean Frieza basically sounded like Rita Repulsa from
Uh-huh.
from
And
Power
sounded
Rangers.
just like her too, you know.
Exactly. It was Rita. I was like, that's what I thought of when I heard Frieza. I was like, oh, I thought it might have been the same actress doing the voiceover, honestly.
Right.
I
Back
mean,
in the-
it definitely wasn't Lord Zed. I wasn't getting, that
Lord.
impression.
But then we go with their second modus operandi, which just seems to try and make really bombastic, shock rock style shit. Like I think they have a show. I've never watched it, but I've never heard good things either. Called Dear White People, and like,
That was based on a movie that was actually not. The movie wasn't terrible. It was.
No, the
I-
movie was fine, but
Yeah, the movie was
just-
alright. The TV
oh
show
my
got
God, that
worse.
show.
Well, which is
Women-
interesting is once you realize the show was run by a Caucasian trans woman, because that was one of the people who was leading the charge to cancel Dave Chappelle after his special on Netflix. And I think that person was pretty silly because most people didn't realize that Dear White People was being showrun and like storied by a Caucasian trans woman. And that was probably a bad call for your brand right there.
But they've got a couple shows like that in the mix, and there's a lot of the shock, the shock rock where it's just like, I'm gonna try and offend you to get you to hate watch this. I guess is the plan. And then
Then
like
what
their
happens?
third
John?
thing is that they lose licenses on things and they fade into obscurity. Like what was it? Daredevil. Like Daredevil was kind of okay. I kind of enjoyed some Daredevil.
Kind of okay. Daredevil was great.
I'm not
And-
a big Daredevil fan to
and
begin with,
the
but
first
like the
season of-
cinematography in the hallway was fucking amazing. I loved that scene.
Yeah,
You
I'm
gotta
gonna.
get up- you got to get up for that for Vincent D'Onofrio alone.
Oh yeah, he was amazing as Kingpin. I do have a soft spot for Michael Clark Duncan. I actually really liked his casting in the live action movie with Ben Affleck.
I liked his
He was the
casting in
best thing
everything
about
he
that
was
movie.
ever in. That dude was fucking amazing.
And they definitely all surpass the very first. All right, here's some fun trivia. Animaine might know this, but do you guys do know who the first actor to portray Kingpin in live action was? Right,
I don't know shit about that.
John Rhys Davis in the Trial of the Incredible Hulk. Remember, it was the TV movie of the the Bill Bixby Incredible Hulk with Daredevil was his lawyer, Matt Murdock, and it was John Rhys Davis who was the Kingpin in that one. That was when they were doing the TV movies. Like they also had the Thor crossover with the guy who played the dad on Good Luck Charlie playing Thor in like 1988 or whatever. But
I actually did not know that, but I'm looking him up right now. You said he played who?
John Rhys Davis played Kingpin.
Kingpin of what?
He was the Kingpin in the Trial of the Incredible Hulk.
No, what is he the kingpin of? Like the fucking deli section of the goddamn supermarket?
Okay.
Who the fuck's kingpin is this? I
I
know
mean-
this was back in the day, but this had to be back when they did that Captain America movie where his mask was just a motorcycle.
It was about it was like 10 years after that. That was in the
This-
70s.
oh
But it was
my
the
goodness.
same era. Yeah, that was Bill Bixby. You remember the Incredible Hulk, the dun dun dun, the walking away sad
You don't
music.
like me
That-
when I'm angry. Yeah.
yeah, that's the he did in the 80s. They brought him back to do TV movies, and one of them was the Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and it had Daredevil. You should look up the actor who played Daredevil. It was terrible.
Goodness gracious. Oh my gosh. The days before there was such thing as I was gonna say quality standard, but just a standard for any of this superhero shit. Like the fact that we got even any type of solid shows or movies back then was proof of God's existence. Has to be Kingpin. Get out of my face.
But I was going to say, to kind of wrap up what we were saying about Netflix, it is the case again. When you're trying to dictate the story, you're going to end up with a mess. And you can do a business model on getting people to hate watch it for a while until someone starts making something good. And then at that point, no one's going to care anymore.
Well, I think the perfect Netflix example of what hate watching gets you is Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe Revelations. You might have made the Netflix top 10 for 3 days, and not even the top 5, but top 10 3 days on part 1 of that series, and everyone hate watched it like I did. And then part 2, I haven't touched it, and it never mattered at all. It didn't trend. It didn't make their Netflix top 10. No one gave a shit about it because you burnt the fans and they just didn't come back. They were done. And the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that's what
right.
Kevin Smith brought to the table.
Yeah, and honestly, the solution for Netflix at this point is fire everyone on your writing staff and hire people who actually give a shit.
Because I wouldn't even known that part 2 came out if it weren't for all them pictures of, who was it, Evelyn, where it was It's Ma'am version of Evelyn.
She ma'am.
It's
Like,
she,
yeah,
ma'am.
Like, she ma'am, right? That's the only
Or
reason I even
Hevelin, I think it was called.
Evelyn.
Yeah, I think I went with
that's another one.
Hevelin was my favorite one.
Oh man, for the memes.
All right. Yeah, this has been a really good time. Animaine, just to close it out, remind everybody a place to go and check out your work.
Okay, a couple different spots. For Bond of the Blade, there's a little mini comic that you could read right now for free on Tapas, which is a few chapters of a standalone adventure that the Heretics, that's the name of the hero group, are on. So you can get to know some of my characters. You can read that for free right now on Tapas. It's updated periodically every few weeks with some more pages that will continue into the beginning of next year, where we hope to have that completed. And you can also find me on YouTube if you just type in either Animaine Sparkstr or just Animaine, and you will find me. It's the angry black looking anime dude with the beard and the mic. Ain't but one of me. And I have several character trailers for Bond of the Blade and the Spider Circle, as well as just all types of content about discussion. Basically, the stuff we talked about up here is my YouTube channel. I'm just a bit more animated up there, and no, that is not an accident that I gave myself that name. Covering topics like that up there with reviews and comic book reads and discussion videos and all types of good shit. So you can find me there. You can find my comics there. You can follow me on Twitter. Yeah, and my only rules are, do your job, don't be a dick, and we'll be along just fine.
Well, there you go.
Such great rules. We should put that on. That should be on the list for every YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was definitely fun chatting it up with you mad lads. I can't wait to come back and do it again.
I think there's going to be a standing invitation for Animaine, man. This is fun. And
absolutely
not just because I always like when people are on here who actually know the stuff that I mention and bring up as examples.
Sometimes I'll be listening. I'm like, I feel like Vinny's kind of just out there talking about stuff. He's so knowledgeable, but I feel like sometimes he's talking into the wind.
See, at least I know when you're listening to it that there's someone out there who's going to get it. That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
There you go. There you go. All right, well, guys, yeah, thanks. And again, we'll be picking it up next week.
All right, deuces.